I have to start this with a confession. I've wanted to explore and amplify the story of Alaska Native culture for a long time now, but I've been scared. As a Black American woman, I know what it's like to have someone else try to tell, or hell, even erase your people's story for you. While I'm welcome into cultures, conversations, and homes around the world, I'm also hyper aware of my position as both a student and a guest. I don't think I've ever felt that more than in my locally Indigenous experience traveling for nearly 2 weeks throughout the state of Alaska. Let's start with the land. Okay, for most people venturing into Alaska, specifically from the contiguous United States, your point of entry is most likely going to be Anchorage. I don't care about your race, ethnicity, or lineage. An absolute must when you visit is a drop-in at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. When I ruminate over the idea of land and whose it is, Alaska's story runs deep and Indigenous. I was able to sit down with executive director of the center, and now a dear sister friend of mine, Emily Edenshaw, to get an on-the-ground look at the work that's being done there.
Here at the Heritage Center, one of the messages that that we've openly shared with everyone is that no matter where you go, whether if you're in Alaska or in the lower 48, you're on Indigenous land.
Yes, you are.
But part of that is if you were not born here, if you were not native to these lands, then you are a visitor. And in being a visitor, you have a responsibility to learn the history of that place.
Right. Think of it as entering someone's house. When you step on Indigenous land, it's about self-awareness, respect, and paying homage to whose home you're actually within. In Alaska, the feeling was omnipresent for me and something that I wanted to learn more about so that I can do better.
There is just such a lack of information that exists. And I see it every day. Tourists that come to the Heritage Center, I hear it time and time again, I had no idea.
I think society, especially cancel culture, has us fearful of making mistakes. Making public mistakes specifically. What I'm learning here in Alaska is that you cannot be fearful of asking the questions. If you want to represent a people and a culture accurately, you must include them in your discovery and research phase. There is no other way. You have to set aside both your fear and your ego and then engage.
I would say that it's very much connected to honor and respecting the land in which you reside. In today's society, there is more of a growing effort to do more land acknowledgements, which I am 110% supportive of. But I think being able to work with Indigenous communities to find a way to, how do you say this? How would you like us to acknowledge your people, acknowledge your tribe?
Talking with Emily really hit home for me because she's emphasizing and living what I believe is the heartbeat of communities of color around the world. It's always the people and how we come together.
When we think of Alaska, Alaska would not be Alaska if it wasn't for Alaska Natives.
Yeah.
It's our cultures. It's the Indigenous peoples that make Alaska. You cannot find Alaska Native cultures anywhere else in the globe. This is where our heritage, our culture start, and that's what makes this place so special. Yeah.
When I told people I was going to Alaska, like clockwork, 3 things were said to me. Watch out for the bears, watch out for moose, and for those who know how hard I go for my culture, those folks warned, ain't no Black people in Alaska. To my immediate response, well, we about to find out. For the record, there are Black people in Alaska, quite a few actually. Let's start with photographer and documentarian capturing their stories, Javel Rennie.
Black people are entrepreneurial. We're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Every single corner you're gonna find us. You'll find us, and not just existing, but thriving.
Right.
And that phrase, there's no Black people in Alaska, that phrase is what spawned this project,
right.
To show not just our people in Alaska,
yeah.
like, hey, we're here, we're existing, and we can learn about each other, but to show the world, like, yeah, we're here, we're everywhere, every single corner.
I love this. And I also think that it's important that Anchorage Museum has taken it on.
Absolutely.
This isn't something that is siloed in a small, studio, museum somewhere. It's real people, real Alaskans, real stories. And I love the fact that you all, and it says it here, you're dismantling stereotypes, right?
I love Anchorage. I'm not from here, but this is my home. And yeah, I just try to do good work, stay out the way, ask other communities how I can help them, like with their initiatives, all that goes on. So that's me.
You all set me up to heed the warning, and now I'm reporting back. There are indeed really dope Black people in Alaska. If you find yourself visiting Anchorage, you can see Javel's ongoing work at the Black in Alaska exhibit at the Anchorage Museum and on blackinalaska.org. Next up is the ridiculously ambitious community advocate and serial entrepreneur, Jasmine Smith.
So a study showed that about 35% of the businesses in Anchorage are BIPOC-owned or ESL-owned businesses. So I think there's certain parts of the city where you see more of them than others, but I think we're starting to be kind of sprinkled everywhere. So I think, switching those narratives from like us being a tragic poor people's story to saying like, no, we're diverse, we have stories too, we have successes. Everybody who lives here wasn't dropped off here. They're not all generationally impoverished. There's some great stuff happening in great businesses. So I do think when you think about traditional tourism in Alaska, you think about like outside and mountains, you think about European Americans, backpacks, fanny packs, but we have a whole nother cultural world here of awesome stuff that it'd be great to see more of a cultural tourism movement. There's a lot of cultural things that in our communities we know it's happening, and it's big for us. So it'd be cool for people who are coming up here to understand you do get that outdoor experience too, but there's so much more than that you get when you come here.
If you're visiting Alaska, you can find Jasmine's baby vend machines at the Ted Stevens International Airport, the Diamond Center Mall, the Anchorage Museum, and more. For me, when I had thoughts of unique Alaska terrain, it wasn't the mountains that circle Anchorage. My first run-in with the Alaska I had in my head happened when the crew arrived in Juneau for celebration. The waterfront, yes, adorned by a rotating schedule of cruise ships, but with a quaint and quirky downtown that will not be overshadowed. And what you didn't find by the water, you find in the green hills. The air in Juneau just hits different. Beyond being the capital of Alaska, we're here in Juneau for a reason. It's celebration.
So every other year in Juneau, there is celebration, and it is our modern day potlatch. And that is a time for our community to come together in song and dance, procession. It feels very ceremonial. It feels like a big family reunion.
Okay, let's backtrack. You have to meet Alyssa properly. Or maybe you've seen her before as an NBC News correspondent, ambassador for the Sea Alaska Heritage Center, or for being a former Miss Alaska in 2017's Miss USA pageant.
When you grow up mixed race and you're trying to communicate to your classmates who you are, because people ask you, that from when you're little, then when I would tell them that I was Tlingit, they didn't know what that was. And so it made it so that throughout my whole life, it just is something that I wanted people to know about, and I used pageants as a way to do that.
Indigenous, First Nation, Natives. In the year that I've become more entrenched in this work, I've heard them all. As a student to this culture that isn't mine, naturally, I don't want to botch this. So how do you know who to designate as what is the question?
I think Indigenous pertains to Native people of anywhere in the whole world.
Got it.
Whereas Alaska Native pertains, of course, to the Native people of Alaska, and American Indian pertains to those tribes in the lower 48, and First Nations pertains to tribes in Canada. Culture is so much about, the smell, the touch, and then the feeling of space. And it wasn't even that long ago that you could come to Juneau and barely see any homage or any imagery that would show that this is Tlingit land.
Right.
And now it's just, when you come to Sea Alaska Heritage Institute with the Art Plaza and this whole central area of downtown Juneau, I'm just really proud that you really know that this is Tlingit Ani, this is Tlingit land.
I believe art is one of the love languages of a community. If you pay close attention, you can feel what a community is going through, understand its values, and see its neighborhood profits. My time in Alaska revealed art in every form, From street murals by Rejoy, to skateboards and handcrafted jewelry by Rico Worl, all the way to the language arts with my time spent with Linda. Art is the heart of a community, and I found that to reign true in Alaska. Let's start with my new favorite muralist, Rejoy. I love learning about how her background inspires her artwork.
I'm a person of color. This is what I'm comfortable with, and there's not enough in the media, not enough representation, not enough women of color, and I just want to be able to showcase them. Be like, yeah, look, we're beautiful, we're strong, we're resilient, we're joyful. Like kind of showing a mirror, just showing like, all right, there's so many different voices here. What can we represent? How can we just shine the light on those folks? So that's something I'm really passionate about.
Right. From the walls of small businesses in Anchorage to arguably the most recognized artist in Alaska, Rico Worl. I'm not exaggerating when I say I ran into his art everywhere on this trip. We're so lucky to catch Rico when we landed in Juneau.
There could be a lot of stress with having to represent your culture. You have to learn the language, you have to learn 10,000 years of history, you have to learn the protocol. And so it's really about that accessibility of pride for Native people. I also wanted to make the products accessible to people that weren't Tlingit, but they could still appreciate the art, appreciate it without appropriating it. You know, I have the opportunity not just to sell to them, but I have the responsibility to educate them as they come through and learn via the artwork that I sell or the artwork that I put out there.
Throughout my time in Alaska, most of the people I've interviewed have been Tlingit, except for Linda. Linda's family is of the Haida Indian tribe of Alaska, and she's one of the remaining preservationists of the native language.
I believe that the Haida language is most endangered at this time. We have one fluent speaker in our community.
Wow.
There was a time period that there wasn't work being done on the Haida language, and it was about 25, 30 years. But nowadays, even though we don't have many fluent speakers, there are younger people younger than myself that are really becoming very proficient in our language.
I'm gonna do my best with learning and honoring Linda's family's language here. I'm really excited to try it out. One of the only women-owned whale-watching tour companies in the state, Jaylene started working as crew on her father's boats when she was 12. Much respect to Jaylene and her company that has done what no one has done before. Got me out in the middle of the open waters looking for whales. I just never thought I'd be out here spotting whales. Equal parts invigorating and terrifying, at least at first. Because after we spotted our first whale, I was hooked. You know that old adage of saving the best for last? That's how I feel about Ketchikan. Ketchikan is known as Alaska's first city due to its location on the southern tip of the Inside Passage. Saxman Village is a small town that is most known for being the home of Totem Bight State Historical Park, where dozens of totem poles are housed. It was here that I was able to catch up with Saxman's shy but charming mayor, Frank Saludo.
Well, there's a population of about 450 people, a mixture of Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian. There are some non-natives. You have two main tribes here, Tongass tribe and Sanyaquan. We're in Saxman, so it'd be Sanyaquan. We have the Beaver Clan house.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in there, from meetings, memorial services, funerals. During the summer, we do a lot of, we run tours through there, get a presentation on the clan house, and native dancing.
Yeah.
Come visit us. It's, rain or shine, it's nice.
That brings me to my new favorite local elder, Joe Williams Jr. I spent 2 hours with Joe on his revered Where the Eagle Walks tour around Ketchikan.
First of all, I want to say welcome to Ketchikan.
Thank you.
And we in Ketchikan truly love to boast about the amount of rainfall that we receive on an annual basis. And just so you know, that figure is 13 feet of rain every year.
Wow.
Today, I really must apologize for the weather. You're not going to receive a true Ketchikan experience, okay?
He is living history. And it tracks because Joe Williams Jr. is the former city mayor of Saxman and was the first Tlingit Alaskan native to be elected mayor of Ketchikan Gateway Borough.
All I can say is, praise God, that's behind me.
Yes,
Yeah.
listen, everything has a season.
Yeah.
Native Alaskan culture is everywhere in the state, but I felt it was the most visible and integrated with my time in Ketchikan. I did not anticipate this city, the last on my tour, to steal my heart the way that it did, but it was instant.
In our Tlingit culture, please know, we don't have goodbyes. So a typical address would be like this, which is saying, the biggest thank you from my heart to yours. Thank you for being with me. You have honored me with your presence.
In Alaska, there's an aviation concept called the Milk Run. It's the name dubbed for multi-city stops that a single plane can make, landing and taking off from places like Anchorage, Juneau, and Ketchikan. I've been lucky enough to share my first 11-day milk run with you all. Alaska is where adventure awaits. I've adored the art and the mountains of Anchorage, been awestruck by the whales and the waterfronts of Juneau, and deeply respected the Alaska Native culture that is in every breath of my time in Ketchikan, from totem poles to the decor at Cape Fox Lodge. I survived my first bear sighting and sleeping through the infamous 24-hour daylight of Alaska's summers. Alaska is, well, Alaska. There's no place quite like it, and that's why everyone should experience her. Her land, her sea, her future and her history, but most of all, her people.